We're going to hear a little bit about household battery product stewardship schemes with the CEO of the Australian Battery Council, Libby Chaplin. Please put your hands together and welcome her to the stage.
Thank you everybody for being here today. I've also just flown in. It's my first time in the area, so I'm really excited to be here as well. Particularly, of course, want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand, and also the Mamirimina people where I live and work in Tasmania. I wanted to give you a quick overview of why responsible management of waste batteries is important, introduce and let you know a little bit more about who we are and what we do, explain to you how this scheme works, because it is new and it's quite unique as well, and then talk about how you might be able to come involved, and then if you've got any questions after that, we'll go into that. I was going to ask you to put your hand up, but we've all been sitting for quite a while, so I suggest everybody stand up if batteries are important in your daily life. Have a bit of a stretch while you're there. Move around a bit. Okay, so sit down if you think you and your community know how and where to safely manage used batteries for recycling. That's pretty good, actually, so I'm impressed with that. But there's still some room for improvement, right? We do know that we are all relying on batteries. We can all sit down now. We are all relying on batteries more and more. It's just a part of the way we live our lives. In fact, we use enough of those little batteries right now to wrap around the planet 2.3 times. But by 2050, that's going to increase to 37 times. So we're just at the cusp of really taking off with our battery dependence. And you can see this is just a different way of looking at that. Particularly with electric vehicle batteries coming on board, it's really going to increase. Australia doesn't have a very good record. When we look internationally, we're about the lowest OECD country in terms of collecting batteries for recycling. So we have a huge opportunity for improvement in that regard. So we all know that batteries are awesome, but they also present some serious problems for us. They're hazardous in some cases, toxic in others. They're corrosive and in some cases highly flammable and combustible. But they're also great in a lot of ways. They're highly recyclable. You can really recover most of the materials through that process. The resources that go into them are finite, so there's a limit to those. And they're also really important and essential for our future energy security. The World Bank actually predicts that we will, that the demand for battery metals is going to increase by 500% by 2050, and that unless we recycle all of that material, we're going to run out of materials like copper, for example, and other metals to make those batteries in the future. And 2050 is actually not that far away. So really important that we manage them. The other issue around batteries is that they are increasingly, with lithium batteries, increasingly leading to fires in collection trucks. One of my major collection companies who does general waste and recycling is finding about 15 fires a month in their trucks just from batteries. So we've got to change the way we're thinking and get batteries out of the general waste stream. We were talking about it just earlier. It's really an important piece of this. So there's lots of reasons to, I didn't know that had a thing, lots of reasons to do it, because most consumers just don't know what to do. So they're just putting them in the recycling and general waste bins. We have about, so 50% putting them in local rubbish bin, 25% putting them in the battery collection point, which is great, 13% putting them in local household recycling. So that's where the fires are coming, and that's what we've got to shift. Rebecca talked a little bit about the time it takes to get these things up and running. We've been talking about batteries since well before 2013 when they were listed as a priority product by the federal government. And you can see just by the highlighted green bits here, that there's been a lot of people involved in this process over that time. And that team effort has been critical for getting here, but it also presents some challenges because of the way product stewardship is structured. And so I really am right behind you, Rebecca, in making some of those changes at the federal level to try and enable this to happen in a more timely manner. The Battery Stewardship Council, on the previous slide, it had a little note saying that we were set up in 2018 as a not-for-profit. We have a fairly new board now, which includes, importantly, I think, the whole supply chain. So we've got importers, retailers and recyclers, as well as independent board members. And not all stewardship schemes do that, they just have the producers. Important that you do have that whole breadth, because then you can have conversations about how to really make this work and so it can work at each stage of that process. We also have a large number of growing participants, which is great, and I'd love to add every one of you here to that list. I'll just jump the slide. Can I go back? Yes. So in the beginning of this year, the Battery Stewardship Council launched B-Cycle, which you've heard a little bit about earlier today. But this is a hugely significant milestone for us, and we're really proud to have gone from that talking phase into the doing phase. And we talked about, there's a little bit of discussion about targets before, and our target is to collect all batteries. So we're not going to set a target and then stop. We're just keen to disrupt this whole process. But I'm going to need all of you to get involved in order to do that. One of the things we did at the launch was to create this video, so I'll just show that for you.
Did you know that Aussie households currently have over 150 million loose and removable batteries floating around? That's roughly a lot per person. And 90% of these used or dead batteries end up as landfill, which corrode and leach elements like zinc, cobalt and lithium into our soil and waterways. The good news is you can do some good and put a stop to this, because now you can recycle your batteries with B-Cycle, Australia's official battery recycling scheme. Try saying that 10 times fast. Battery recycling scheme. Batteries need to be kept out of reach from children at all times, and battery terminals need to be safely taped and then gently placed into accredited B-Cycle bins. B-Cycle is nationwide, with thousands of easy and convenient accredited B-Cycle drop-off points. For each recycled battery, up to 95% of its materials can be remade into things we use every day, like metal tools, computer parts, tyres, even new batteries. What? So head to bcycle.com.au to find your nearest drop-off location and to purchase new B-Cycle accredited batteries. B-Cycle. Give new life to dead batteries. Has anyone got any tape? I need tape to put it in the bin.
So we actually did 4 different videos. If I've got time, I'll show you a couple of the other ones. But the button battery safety video actually was just taken up by the European Society for Paediatric Gastroenterology as a great way of increasing awareness about the hazards associated with button batteries and how to manage that. So that was a fantastic outcome. And if we don't get to it, you can just go to our website and download it from the resources page. So B-Cycle isn't a recycling program in itself. We are a scheme, so we are authorised by the ACCC and accredited by the federal government. And as I mentioned, we include everybody in the whole supply chain, and a lot of that involves transparency and accountability. So we've got some accreditation outcomes up here, which I'm really proud of as well. So after all of the talking, we've now launched the scheme with 40 accredited importers. So they're the people that pay us through a levy, 22 accredited retailers. We have, amazingly, 91% of the loose battery market participating and 90% of the power tool market participating. So for a voluntary scheme, that's an amazing thing. We've obviously got to get to the last 10% in each of those, but it's a really important piece. We've just going through our accreditation process, so we've got 7 accredited collectors and recyclers. And we launched with 2,300 drop-off points, and that's increased to 2,500 since launch. And we've had about 150,000 views of that website the last time we counted. Oops, did I just skip one? I thought it was just important to talk about what sort of batteries are covered here. So if it's already being collected, which is the lead-acid batteries, because of the value of the lead, it's not covered by our scheme. If it's covered by other schemes and it's not part of our scheme, so if it's a mobile phone or it comes out of a television or computer or exit lighting, it's not part of our scheme. So we've launched really focusing on loose batteries, consumer electronic batteries, power tool batteries and button batteries. But we do recognise that bigger batteries, electric vehicle batteries, for example, will have to come. So we're working towards that. We're doing action right now, so we'll have a strategy for that by the end of the year. How it works. So I mentioned the levy. It's a voluntary levy on battery imports. It's 2 cents at the moment for an equivalent battery unit of 24 grams, which is about a AA. It's capped at 4 cents. We have, so these are all part of the authorisation. We have enterprise-to-enterprise agreements, which basically means that we can all use our purchasing power to support the scheme. So if you buy batteries from scheme participants, that encourages them to stay involved. So that's a crucial piece. And it's worked amazingly. So some of the big retailers have put real pressure on their brands, and that has enabled them to come to the table. We have a system of rebates, and the intention and the way they've been designed has been to address market failure. So we have, obviously the goal is to create a national collection network. So we have 2 collection rebates. One is for metropolitan areas, which is $2.50 per kilo. One for regional collections, and that's really the transport we're talking about, the logistics part, of $3.50 in regional areas. And for Northern Territory, Western Australia and Tasmania, we're just basically calling it all regional. And then there's a rebate for sorting and for processing. The sorting rebate has to be done in accordance with the processing requirements, so they're kind of connected, but they could be done by different organisations. But to be part of it, you have to be part of the whole chain has to be in place. So we can only pay the rebates once there's proof of transfer from the batteries from the collection to the sorting, and from the sorting to the recycling, and then the end of life. And the last piece of it is that in order to access the rebates, there's an accreditation piece so that we can make sure this is safely done, and we can also make sure it's actually done. So all of the batteries that we say we're collecting don't just get stored somewhere, they really are getting recycled. And we do that through announced and unannounced audits. I thought I should just focus on the rebates for a second. As I mentioned, the intention, when we were putting it together, we were really looking at the market failure, and that's why the collection rebates are the highest, because it's the transport that really is the big challenge. And so the intent really is to offset those costs. The rebates aren't available directly to a drop-off point, so just be aware of that. Our research all found that there wasn't really a need to incentivise that collection because of some of the safety issues and because of people's perceptions, really not necessary, but was really important to offset the costs. We have enabled drop-off points to work with their collectors to access part of the rebate, so long as those costs are still covered. It's not a deposit scheme, so we really don't want people hoarding batteries because of the safety issues associated with them, so that wasn't the intent. The intent really was to start getting these batteries out of the collections and out of local government landfills. So I mentioned that we launched with 2,300 sites. We're up to about 25 at the moment. we only have 28 in Northern Territory, which is really my big motivation for coming, because I really would like to shift that and work with all of you to do that. I think a key piece of this really is creating convenient locations. And of those 23 or 2,500 now, so Woolworths, for example, has one in every store, if not nearly every store. But we're also working with organisations like the Lions Club, who are starting to go out into more regional areas and do pickups. So there's definitely an evolving map there, and I'd be happy to work with you guys to figure out how we might change that here in the Northern Territory. Because I think that's what we're talking about. Right? We're really talking about change. We've launched, but we recognise that we're far from done, and there's a lot more to do, and there's a lot more to improve about our processes. They're kind of new, so really important to work together to work through those things, make sure that we can improve safety and circularity, but also really start getting batteries recycled in the Northern Territory. Am I going for time? Just quickly over the accreditation process I talked about. So everybody in the whole process becomes accredited, and they have different obligations. So importers have to, for example, pay the levy, and we're also asking them to improve their labelling to enhance recyclability. Everybody in the scheme has to use that purchasing preference, so really to buy from other members in the scheme, and the ACCC has enabled that. We're trying to leverage awareness too, so we ask everybody that participates to roll out branding and co-branding. Obviously we need everyone to be in compliance, so that's important. To dispose of batteries only to B-Cycle accredited parties. And importantly, I think a key piece of all of this is accountability, so that transparency piece. How do we make sure the chain of custody is maintained right through the process, and participating in audits and so forth. So they're the sort of overall commitments, and then there are specific commitments depending on what role you play in the process. The verification process varies depending on the role. Obviously at the recycling end it's quite an extensive process, because we need to make sure that all of that safety is in place, but there are verification activities all the way along the process. So if you wanted to become an accredited drop-off point, for example, first step is to find a B-Cycle accredited collector, and they will work with you to manage how to set up your system. They'll also help you to work out how to get an appropriate container. And then as a drop-off point, we do ask that people sign what we call a code of practice. It's only a 2-page document, but it just goes through why this is important and what are the safety issues that you need to be aware of and to communicate to the people using your process. Also complete a site risk assessment and safety plan, and we have a template for that as well to make it a little easier. But I think we just all need to realise that batteries aren't as easy to manage as some products. There are some risks associated, so let's just be aware of those and figure out how to do it safely. And that's what that site risk assessment and safety plan is intended to do. But you can use your own if you like. If you've got your own process, then go for it. Submit your documents to us, and then we'll also have we have a training module available online for people to go through that also just helps increase awareness about that. There are a few collectors in the room, so I think I will go through this. So I didn't change that yet. So if you want to become a collector, is a little bit more involved. It starts the same way, signing the Battery Steward Commitment Form. There's also a much more comprehensive application form that goes through a lot more of the safety issues and compliance issues. We have a container safety protocol as well, just to make sure that any containers that are being used are also safe. So have to make sure that your containers meet those requirements. Submit all of that to us, and then we have an independent auditor who would come out and verify your systems. And then once that's all in place, use the B-Cycle app to submit claims, and then we pay you the rebates, which is really what we're here for, to make sure that the levy proceeds are really being used to make a difference. So we have a website where you can go and put your postcode in and find your most convenient location. So that's a really good place to start. But, you know, we have only just launched, so this is going to be improving all the time. And if any of you are interested in helping us provide drop-off points, then please do come and let me know. Follow us on LinkedIn. And I just thought I do have time, I think, to give you another video, so I will.
Never keep dead batteries in places where their terminals can touch or spark, unless they've been safely taped securely on both ends. And remember, always keep batteries out of reach of children.
A quickie but a goodie. We've got a pretty small team. There's only 3 of us full-time, but I definitely can give this to you guys. If you want to get in touch, come and see me today, obviously. But we're always open to working with you to find new ways of doing this. We're absolutely flat out at the moment, as you can imagine, still getting this whole thing rolled out. And our marketing budget for this year is complete, but next year it's possible that we could do something more specific to remote areas or regional areas. So happy to start that conversation now so that we can be ready to do it in the new year. Do you want the button battery safety video?
Old or dead button batteries can still pose a severe injury risk, particularly in young children who put everything in their mouths. Ugh. If you stick the batteries on sticky tape in a row like so, it makes it much harder for kids to swallow. Unless they can dislocate their jaw like a snake, and that's just gross.
So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or feel free to come up and chat with me after.